Fun and memorable are how we want our games to be remembered. But fun and memorable are not the same thing. You can have fun by just playing the game. Memorable, though, well, memorable's a bit more complex. Your players are unlikely to remember the loot they found in their first dungeon, but they will probably remember facing near impossible odds against a wicked villain, because heroes are defined by their villains in victory and defeat. The party of students turned adventurers consisted of Duke, the bard looking to make his ancestors proud, the twins, Edward and Jacob, who had opposite dispositions of morality, but shared an unbreakable bond, and Yug, their chaperone, who so far had done a poor job. What started as field study had turned into a fight for their lives, as they had escaped dire wolves, specters, monstrosities, and even a house intent on snuffing them out. When they stumbled across an elderly lady in the streets with a cheery disposition, they were relieved. Maybe not everything in this cursed land had soured. She expressed sympathy for their situation and shared wisdom, and then gifted them with some pies, as they had little to eat. She told them that these were no normal pies, and that they would help them sleep easier at night. Starving, Yug ate one immediately, and bought a few more. She asked them not to forget little old Morgantha. Unlucky for them, they would not. Deception can be a powerful motivator. There's nothing quite like letting your guard down and ultimately finding the dagger in your back. It's a classic storytelling trope, but it just works. In this example, Morgantha spoke to us truthfully. Even with an insight check, questions we asked were answered genuinely. We just were not asking the right questions. So when we ultimately discovered what she was up to, it just hurt that much more. And who is going to suspect a little old lady selling pies with a cheery smile to be your nemesis? The sun was setting fast, and the party was still hours away from the town of Vallaki when they stumbled upon an old windmill. They knew that they had two choices: risk the horrors that roamed Barovia at night, or seek shelter in the windmill. They quickly chose the latter, and strode up the trail to the windmill. As they approached, they noticed a faint glow of light coming from the filthy windows, and smoke billowing from the chimney. A crow greeted them out front, squawking loudly. They were apprehensive to just go in all at once, so Jacob, the sly one of the twin brothers, decided to investigate, starting at the top. After some time, the party decided to take their chance and knocked on the door. To their relief, they were greeted to a smiling face that beckoned them inside and introduced herself as Ophalia, and she made pies for the people of Barovia with her sister Bella and mother Morgantha. Hearing this, the party let down their guard. If Morgantha showed them kindness, then surely her daughters would as well. The smell of buttery pastry and savory fillings filled the air. Ophalia was working on a new flavor of pie, and was keen to get their opinions. While most of the party were being welcomed inside, Jacob, who wasn't trusting of anyone other than his brother, decided to continue his investigation as he deftly entered into the windmill through a window on the third floor. If anything, maybe he would come across some gold they wouldn't miss. But the situation quickly began to change. Here, on the top floor, were 3 cages, just large enough for a dog, but 2 were occupied. Inside, he found 2 trapped children. Something was wrong here. He began slowly, but silently, making his way to the second floor. While Jacob made his unsettling discovery, the rest of the party were pleading with Ophalia to allow them to stay the night. They had gold and were willing to part with it. However, their pleas were denied, but Ophalia was insistent on still being generous and offering them pie considering their predicament. Yug continued to plead with her. He was now very aware of the danger in this land, and he had the students, his friends, to keep safe. So narrowed was his focus that he did not see the piles of small bones littering the table, a detail that Edward's keen elven eyes did not. As Jacob began descending the stairs, he caught sight of a young woman sweeping the floor. Careful not to make noise, he continued down to see what else might lie in the windmill. A few careful steps, and the horror was revealed to him. At this moment, Edward interrupted Yug during his plea. "Pardon me, but I think I may know your secret ingredient." This caused Yug to finally take notice of the piles of bones surrounding them. They were small, but unmistakably of a human child. Without another thought, blinded by rage and shame, Yug grasped at the woman. Unfortunately for Yug, he was not fast enough. The young woman began to cackle as her bones snap and break, her limbs grotesquely growing, and her skin darkening to a sickly purple hue. Though the young battle-hardened students didn't know it yet, they had picked a fight they would not win. Within minutes, 2 were unconscious, 1 had fled, and the last, poor Jacob, lay dead. Overpowered. When our party eventually faced this hag coven, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. Not a clue. So when combat kicked off and they started changing, it was a bit surprising, but we were still confident. That confidence began to quickly dissipate, though. Now, when it comes to overpowering your players, it's best not to try and TPK them outright. Now, TPKs can be justified, but in this situation, probably not so. We were given very little clues as to what we were getting ourselves into, even with trying to be careful and investigate things ahead of time. But in that circumstance, the hags didn't choose to outright kill us, but instead preserve us, or most of us, but not without leaving us with a parting gift, stranded in the middle of nowhere. Their ultimate goals as to why were unbeknownst to us, but to the hags, well, we could be something more useful to them later. All the more motivating for us to end them. As the gloom of early morning peeked through the windows of the vineyard, Yug sprung up from his cot, his knuckles white as they clenched the hand axe he kept at his side. Scanning the room, he saw his friends still sleeping, save for Edward, who was staring at his newfound spectral arm, glowing ethereally, barely hiding the bony structure underneath. It was a parting gift from a fatal encounter that would forever scar Edward and serve as a reminder to Yug of his own failure to protect his friend. This sudden jolt provoked a whimper across the room from children of the vineyard. Realizing this, Yug quickly puts away the axe and gives them a toothy grin, as if to say everything is okay. But his body ached, and previous wounds still tender. These were the least of his worries, though. His nightmares over the past week felt too real for his comfort. Every time he closed his eyes to rest, Morgantha would crawl from the darkness to straddle and cackle over him. The sensation of her weight and damp rancid breath from the old hag assaulting his senses, as he was paralyzed to endure it. Everything was not okay. But every day, he cracked a grin for his friends. A grin that was becoming harder to summon each passing day. Within the hour, the party was mobilized and set on their way. But Yug notices that Duke's behavior is off. His quirkiness and witty quips curiously absent from their breakfast, and replaced with dark, sunken eyes and silence. Yug hangs back to discover the source of his distress. Duke, with worry in his eyes, asks, Do you ever get this feeling that we're being followed? The painful truth washes over Yug as his fears became realized. There was no room for coincidence with his superstitions. He was not alone in this haunting. Yug summons the remainder of his shattered confidence to produce a weak smirk as he responds, Maybe, but they've got it coming for them. And believe me, it's coming soon. Haunting. Now, haunting in this particular scenario is very literal, as Morgantha and the Coven sisters were pretty much haunting our dreams. And, of course, this is very effective. Every night I was reminded of my failure to overcome them, and it just made me hate them night over night over night. Wanting to go back, I wanted to go back as soon as I was awoken, but there just was more pressing things. This also came with a mechanical caveat as well. Every night you're haunted by the Hag Coven, you gain a level of exhaustion for every night you are unable to rest for a complete 8 hours. So it makes things very interesting, and it put things on a time crunch. So not only did I hate their guts, there was something actually driving me that way beyond the story. Now, not every villain is going to literally haunt dreams and have a mechanic for it, but you can easily replace this with perhaps taunting your players. They could leave clues and signs or send letters to them occasionally reminding them of how they were bested, or hire bards to sing songs of their failures next time they come into town. Honestly, there's a lot of ways that you can do this, but it sets up for a nice recipe. So deceive, haunt, taunt, overpower. This can give you a good guideline to setting up the basis for a good and memorable villain. Now, do they need to have this? No. Do you actually need to have a villain to have something memorable? Again, no. But it is an easy way to give character to something that they will remember. And though in Curse of Strahd, Strahd is a cool character, and we do hate him in his own right, I don't know if anything will come close to the hate my character Yug had for Morgantha and her daughters. Thank you for watching. Now go give your players something to hate. And remember, forever.